fact, our son, who I learned early on to try to figure out who needed to go to bed early, he needed to because we as parents needed to recover. So we finally figured out some strategies to get Eric into bed early and stuff. And Eric had been in all kinds of these same lessons with us. In fact, Mark Victor Hansen, Chicken Soup for the Soul author, was a big fan of Eric's. He'd gotten a hug by Mark Victor. And when Eric would be a little bit too much on occasion, I would say, you need to go in your room and settle down and be quiet. And put Mark Victor Hansen in on your cassette recorder. This was before CDs, of course. And he'd, I'm not going to do that. That stuff is really, really stupid. And then I'd hear the tape player going, and he'd be listening to Mark Victor Hansen. So here we are, family, have this wonderful trip to Florida, great time. Eric's tickled pink because what happens is he and Dad go out in the jet skis kind of thing, and they happen to accidentally go into a nature preserve where they were not supposed to be, and guess who gets stopped by the water policeman? But his dad. He thought that was pretty good, but Dad's the guy that gets stopped. So we're headed home from this trip, driving home all the way back to Iowa from Florida, and we come into the winter storm environment, and it was a very serious ice storm. Unfortunately, as you are suspecting where I'm going with this story, we did in fact have an accident. And there were 2 fatalities in that accident, our son Eric and the other driver. It was a 2-lane road, icy conditions, no one's fault. These things happen. Accidents happen. In fact, it harkens me back to a bumper sticker I had seen prior to this accident that was, SH happens. And I would say to myself, why would anyone put that bumper sticker on their car? Why would you want that on their car? And then we had this accident, and I began to understand that things happen, stuff happens, not necessarily the way we want. And I think every parent, so many parents have said to me that this is the worst case scenario, to lose a child. We've seen celebrities lose children of late, and it happens. There's no guarantee that our children will bury us. Many of us have buried children. Unfortunately, my husband and I are part of a very large club. At the time we had the accident, Eric was 14 and a half years old. Mercifully, in the accident environment, other family members, myself included, were spared from recognizing exactly what was happening. I was very fortunate to have been the one family member who essentially walked away from the accident, had professional assistance through a chaplain in the hospital when all of this came through. And I learned through all of this, to deal with it, help my other family members, had to be strong because for many of Eric's classmates, 14-year-old children, they haven't gone to a funeral. They haven't lost somebody close to them. For many of those kids, the first funeral that they even went to was a good friend, a close friend. This is their first funeral. And that's where we were. Over 600 people came to this visitation. And my husband's a chiropractor. We had a large body of patients who were very supportive. I remember one elderly man coming through who was just an amazing older man. He was about 82, 83 at the time. And he hugged me and he took my hand and he said from his heart, I wish it could have been me instead. And he would have completely and fully have given himself instead. And the love that people gave us. And to think in times of hardship that there isn't love and to have bitterness. The other driver who died, her husband came by and we all came to know each other. I came to know the other driver, her mother, who was old enough to be my mother, right? Because she was my age. We all had this unity, this love that came through in that hard time. Now, my husband was unable to work following this accident. We're all recovering. In fact, there was some question whether he and our daughter would be able to attend the funeral because of their injuries. They were able to attend the funeral. It was hard, of course, for all of us, hard for all of the children there, the many, many people that visited. And my husband, as a chiropractor, depending on him to generate income, to take care of us, was off work and unable to work for 3 months. For 3 months, he was not in the office at all. Love, compassion, faith, confidence, trust, belief in other people. People are good. Expect the best. Our competitors, the other chiropractors in our community, the people that we are competing with in business, one might say, but we all, of course, want the best for our patients. We're about compassion and healing and helping people to live their potential. The other chiropractors in our area were brought together particularly through the coordinated efforts of Dr. Gregg in Iowa City. And our chiropractic colleagues worked in my husband's stead for 3 months. They managed and carried our practice at no charge to us. They volunteered, they filled in day after day for our office, for my husband, for us, out of love. That is the miracle of love. That is the miracle of love. Children, classmates of Eric's, came into our home and cleaned. And as I was sitting and helping to clean with one of Eric's very, very good buddies, Melissa, she's sharing with me how Eric helped her. He was so good, made her be all she could be. Another good friend of his, Mitchell, says, if it weren't for Eric, I'd have never shot the basket. But the one thing that Melissa told me that was so lovely, Melissa says, you know, one thing about Eric that I just don't, or about one of our teachers that I don't get, and Eric was just such a good kid and everything, she says, but you know, I would write this paper. We had a class together, Mrs. H's class, our English class. You know, I would write my paper for Mrs. H, and I would turn it in, and I would get a C on this paper. I would get a C on this paper. And she says, Eric would get an A, and I wrote his paper. The same night I wrote my paper, and he would get an A, and I would get a C. I just don't get it. The love, the interaction, the support, it can come in the gesture of a friend or in the gesture of business colleagues, but the love is out there. We have to have faith and always know that it will work out well, naturally right.